So next up, we have Amanda Bradford, who is the CEO and founder of The League. And the talk is going to be about launching a marketplace from scratch. So as I announce Amanda here, Amanda Bradford is the founder and CEO of The League, an exclusive dating app that matches smart, busy, and ambitious people together. Amanda studied at Carnegie Mellon and Stanford and worked at Sequoia Capital, Salesforce, and Google before launching The League. Amanda, welcome. Have fun. The stage is yours.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. Awesome. Let's see if I can. Sweet. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm here to, this is a little bit of a high energy presentation, so hopefully I'll wake everybody up. So drink your coffee. So my presentation is about launching a marketplace from scratch. I wanted to go through how we launched The League in San Francisco it was in 2014, and how we built our marketplace from scratch and how I used the art of pre-gaming, which I'll go into. So I like to call this talk pre-gaming our launch. And if you don't know what a pre-game is, think back really hard to college and ask your neighbor, and someone should remember. So the way I think about launching a product, I have never launched a product, so I've never actually been in like a traditional marketing role. I was new to app development world. I'm a new CEO. I'm learning a lot of things for the first time. So I tried to think about how I would launch a product based on kind of Amanda's experience at, I was like 29 at the time, and I'm known to have quite a few pretty good birthday parties in my day. And, I have had party buses, I've had large, pretty large, complex events. One time I think I had 400 people at a birthday party because I decided to make all the Scorpio birthdays part of it. And so anyway, that's one of my skill sets I do have. So I thought back about my best parties and tried to think of the common threads between them. And one of the things that always seemed to pop up was that they all had a really epic pregame component to it. So I tried to employ that tactic when I thought about launching The League in San Francisco 3 years ago now. So quick agenda, I'll go into a little bit about me and The League just so you kind of understand the product that we were launching, how we define success of a launch, and then sort of the benefits of sort of this pregame strategy and how you actually use it to make sure your main event, which is your product launch, is as amazing as you want it to be and it reaches all your hopes and dreams. And then I'll try to leave some time for questions. The goal of this presentation is to be pretty tactical, so don't be afraid to ask tactical things. It's hard to launch a marketplace from scratch, and if anyone is launching a marketplace, feel free to kind of ask in the weeds questions. I'm open to that. Okay, so quick background on The League. What is The League? I like to say we're a dating app for aspiring power couples. So what I mean by that is we wanted to kind of copy or emulate the admissions process of a highly selective university because I was at Stanford Business School, and that was actually one of the inspirations for me. Was I think now there's been about 30 or 40 weddings of just classmates that were in my my cohort of 300 at business school. So there's something to be said for kind of putting together really smart, driven individuals, and they tend to like each other, right? They tend to understand each other. So I think that's sort of the premise behind The League, was that these type of people, career-driven, ambitious, maybe even workaholic a little bit, they kind of tend to be attracted to each other. Who am I? So why am I the one building it? Well, first of all, I was single, and so that was a big motivation, personal motivation. I think there's also something to be said for there's different types of relationships out there, and there's different type of people looking for different types of relationships. And I think I've been on one bad date too many where I wasn't really exactly what someone was looking for, and nor were they what I was looking for. And so I think this is a kind of a funny self-deprecating comment I made in a blog post, but I wasn't everyone's cup of tea, and I think that's okay, but how do we sort of realize that up front without wasting a ton of first date time? So at my point, I was, I think I said I was like $200,000 in debt to Stanford, and so I was counting every hour, as a billable rate, and I'm like, I need to make sure that these people have a high chance of really matching, kind of what I want and what they want, and so how do I eliminate this sort of bad first date experience? And why are we up here talking? So I like to think we were pretty successful in San Francisco as far as kind of launching from scratch. So we started, I remember when we only had 100 signups, and we actually were able to grow 276,000 within 3 months of going live with no paid marketing. So we didn't do any paid acquisition. We didn't give any money to Facebook or Instagram. So it's all based on word of mouth, a little press, and people referring their friends. And now we're about 250,000 monthly actives, which is small in comparison to like Tinder and Bumble. But actually, if you think about it, I like to think our users are 10 times the quality. So we're of course going to always kind of be 1/10 the size because we're really going after quality, not quantity. And we want growth, but we want sort of quality growth, not growth at all costs. So we're pretty happy with how our launches have been going, and we just launched Philadelphia actually a couple months ago. So I think that we're excited to be here. All right, so why did I start the league? Well, we talked a little bit about my kind of me going on a couple bad first dates. I think there was a couple other issues I had with the dating app. So I definitely explored them all. Like I'm not someone to reinvent the wheel. If it was out there, I was going to use it, but I tried everything. And I think the same issues I had was, one, I don't want to see my Facebook friends. Like, stop showing me my Facebook friends on my dating feed. The other one was I saw coworkers. So I was doing an internship at Sequoia. Practically all the associates were single men. I was seeing them, and I was popping up on their feed. That's pretty awkward, especially when you're trying to get a full-time offer. It's just, talk about, like, especially in the wake of the current, environment right now, like even more necessary. I really just wanted to keep work and personal separated. I also didn't want to see anyone I had done business with. So I'd previously been in kind of business development roles, sales roles at Salesforce and Google. I was constantly using LinkedIn to meet and say, hey, I'm interested in looking at this product or whatever I was sort of selling at that time. And so I really didn't want to see people I had done business with. Like, I knew them, I didn't want my first degree connection. So what we did is we actually I made everybody log in with both Facebook, LinkedIn, and then I put a human review team, which used to just be me, but now it's a team of people to review the applications so that we don't ever see your friends, you never see your coworkers, you never see anyone you've done business with. We're here to bring you like a second degree network that you didn't have access to before. We're trying to leverage technology, to help you, not to sort of add awkwardness to your dating life. So that was sort of my kind of biggest pet peeve, coupled with the fact that just the profiles were like, usually you just see a photo, so you're really just playing hot or not. You don't know what kind of industry they're in. You don't know if they actually want a serious relationship. You don't know if they're even there full time. They might be in town for the weekend because it's all GPS based. So I found that very frustrating as well, that I didn't kind of know. I was finding myself like literally stalking people before I met them for coffee. I would go on LinkedIn, I would go on Twitter, I would go on Facebook. I'd try to get a sense for like who this kind of guy was. Is it worth me driving an hour from Palo Alto to San Francisco to go on a coffee date for an hour and then drive back? If they're in town for the weekend, probably not. Do they live on their mom's couch? I was trying to figure out clever ways to ask that. So I was just like, this is dumb. Like, why don't we get all this stuff kind of done up front so that once you're in, you get to just kind of work on your witty banter, I like to say. So anyway, we launched in November, so I was 6 months out of grad school. I gave myself kind of a pretty tight deadline. I said, I want to launch by the end of the year and see if this really has legs. If it doesn't, I'm going to go and pay off my incredible student debt. And so we launched it in November, and then in January, we were able to close a $2.1 million round. It kind of ended up growing to 2.5 after that, but and that was purely based on the really good positive metrics we had, early metrics, and small user numbers. So like the numbers were not very sexy, but the quality of the numbers were. So I'll get into the metrics here, but our like health metrics were so good that was sort of what sealed the deal for our round to close. So how did we actually do this? How do we launch a successful marketplace from scratch? I like to quote this guy's shirt: we pre-gamed harder than we partied. We actually didn't even have a launch party in San Francisco. We just had a variety of pre-games. And I still believe in this strategy because expectations are zero for pre-games, so you can always exceed them, whereas launch party expectations have been ruined by venture capital over capitalizing companies. So we don't want to compete with the launch party game. So first we wanted to define success of our launch. How would we make sure that San Francisco was a good launch? And so I thought about what makes a good product launch, and obviously the biggest metric is on opening day, did anybody show up? Like, did anybody even come to your store when you opened it? If 0 people come, that's really bad. So that's sort of the first metric you need to protect, is like make sure people show up. And the same goes for a party. The party literally doesn't happen if nobody shows up. So the whole parties are even more at risk of this. So it's even more important at a party to make sure that people are going to show up. And you think about how you should define after that. So after you kind of look at, okay, did anyone show up? What else do you need to worry about? And you think about it, it's basically the same questions any investor is going to ask you once you've launched your marketplace. You know, what were your daily active users? Did people interact? Did they message? Did they do whatever they're supposed to do on the app, which is, you know, for us it was, did they like people? Did they message them? What is your retention? Did people stay? Did they refer other friends? Did they say, hey, you guys got to check out this app? And then what's your K factor? So did they, did they tell friends, did they refer? And then before was retention. So did they come back the next day? Did they come back maybe that night? Did they, you know, what's their session length and all these kind of things. And if you actually think about when your friends, when you try to convince your friends to go to a party, I don't know if you've called your friends from a party, but I have, and I'm like, hey, you know, I'm at a cool party, do you want to come? You start getting grilled, right? Like people don't just get off their couch for nothing. So it's like, okay, you're getting me off the couch, I need to know a couple things. Usually they're like, how many people are there? What kind of party are we talking about? You know, is it fun? How much longer are people staying by the time I get up off the couch? Are you even going to be there? And then who else is there? Are people coming? Are cool people coming? Anyone you think could be a good fit for me? And you think about it, it's literally the exact same questions an investor asks you. The annoying questions of, you know, what is your daily actives? What's your engagement? What's your retention? What's your virality? So I think, I do think there's a lot of analogies to be had between the two. And so if you think about them that way, how do you kind of mitigate the fact that any of these metrics going the wrong way? So I think of pre-games as almost an insurance policy and protecting that these 4 metrics so that you're kind of ensuring that you have a really good launch day. So what I think is the kind of the secret key here is the pregame. So it's really building that inner circle of loyal users that are with you early on and make sure that you have a good launch day. So I like to say that when everyone's like, oh, congratulations on building such a successful dating app, I'm always like, thank San Francisco, because we really built it on the backs of them. We didn't do paid marketing. They sort of sold the product for us, and I like to think it's because we spent 4 months sort of nurturing that early community. So if you think about a pregame, so let's go back to college again. I know this is fun for us. I like to say I went to college twice, so it's easier for me. But you think about, when you go to someone's dorm room for a pregame, like, why are you going there? And there's some different things that you use to kind of add value to someone who's going to a pregame. So for instance, they get free booze. When you're 18 in college, you don't have an ID, that's a big deal. You get to choose what songs you want to play. Maybe there's only 20 people at the dorm party, so you get to choose if you want to play Rihanna, whatever. You're in charge a little bit of that party. You can have real conversations. It's not as loud. You're not screaming over dance music. You get to arrive at a party with a crew, so that always looks cool and is fun to kind of have a group of people that is your little family for the night at the party. And then you get to I always say you get to charge your phone or use someone's cool new Bluetooth speaker. You get cool access to things at that pregame that you might not get at a larger event. And if you actually look at why you should. Kind of what the results are from the pregame is like, yes, you kind of have to do a little bit more work because you're hosting this pregame, but then if you can herd your pregamers to your own party and you're the one hosting both, you make sure they show up and are on time, which is a huge issue with events. I don't know if anyone knows, but if you don't do any incentives at events, typically girls come about 30 minutes behind and guys come about like an hour and 15 minutes behind, just like naturally. So you have to kind of gamify a lot of stuff to get people to show up and get there on time. And so this makes sure if you're kicking them out of your party, your pregame, they kind of have nowhere else to go. So you're going to get people there on time. They're going to be high energy and outgoing. They've had a couple drinks. They're sort of there welcoming the new people. They feel committed to your party. They know that this is a big deal for you. You've talked to them at the pregame about how important the launch or the main event is, and they feel kind of committed and loyal. And then they also get their friends to join them. They've blocked off that night for your event, so they're like, guys, if you want to hang out with me, I'll be at this party. You guys should come. And so I do feel that our pregamers are really what kind of made our actual launch, launch so sort of strong and healthy with the metrics. So how do you actually throw an awesome pregame? Well, honestly, the trick is not that hard. So like I said, expectations are 0 for pregames, because that's not really an industry standard. So you really kind of capitalize on that. And really it's about kind of, for me, I think the most important step is building the invite list. So we'll go into sort of the 4 steps, but I think the first one is where you should spend the longest. And it's really about understanding what is gonna make your party awesome. And usually it's the people, it is. If you go talk to anyone about a great party, I mean, no matter how many cool acts and like fire throwers and people coming out of cakes and all that stuff you have, if you don't have kind of the right people together, the party is not going to be successful. So building your invite list is super, super important. Getting people to actually show up, like I said, they're going to show up late, and a lot of people are not going to show up just naturally. So you have to just sort of assume a 50% flake rate. You have to assume no, everyone's going to come at the worst time. So you have to think about that and kind of mitigate that. And then it's acting cool. So I'll go into these, but it's not pressuring people to buy anything or sell anything, and just keep it friendly and open, and think about this as you're almost building a beta testing community. So with the building an invite list, I found the most effective is using what I call the VIP approach, and that's literally like spending the time to kind of think through what are the influencers you want in your community. So someone was creating a hiking app, and I asked them like, who are the coolest hikers on Instagram, and they didn't know. And to me, that means they haven't followed any of this. They haven't really done kind of the work to understand who in their community would make the party really cool, right? If you want to have a hiking party or like introduce hikers to each other, you need to know like who they're following and who inspires them. So you're really creating these. For us, a lot of it was making sure we had someone from McKinsey, we had someone from Google, I had people represented from the different kind of nodes in San Francisco that I wanted to make sure were represented in our initial like founding class. So I would go and I would say, who do you know at Goldman Sachs? Like who knows a lot of people? Who's sort of the socialite at Goldman Sachs? And kind of understanding these people. The other thing I did, I would go to a lot of events. So like I wasn't doing the development. I paid someone to do the development so that I could literally go to almost every networking event in San Francisco and just meet, and it's almost like door-to-door sales. You're exchanging cards, you're not asking them to download the app, but you're just getting their information because eventually you're gonna ask them to download the app, but you don't do it right away. So I think of this as almost like you're collecting leads in person, but in a really friendly way, in a human, personal way, where you're not, as an entrepreneur to entrepreneur, and just really building awareness. And then the last was like door-to-door sales, I say, but when I went to a Soul Cycle class, I would then go and find women and say, hey, you guys want to come to this event we're having next week? I was at the Soul Cycle class with them, so they already felt a level of trust with me. So really doing, going and pitching. I always say pitch a party, not a product, because it's a lot easier to invite someone to something, a stranger to something, than like ask a stranger to download an app. So you think about it as if you have something of value that you're kind of offering, like no one's really mad about that you invited them to a party that they don't have to pay for. So it's kind of a nice way to sort of do these door-to-door sales without being like the annoying salesperson. And then there's a network approach. So definitely using your Facebook network and your, any alumni networks you have, any groups you're involved in. Of course, I did that, but I would say that's a little bit less effective. You're not going to get the kind of loyalty and the, I know this person and I know that she's building this and I think it's launching in November, and you don't feel as sort of on the inner circle. However, I mean, you definitely need to do everything you can at this stage. So leveraging this is definitely important. And then as far as getting people to show up, like I said, it's hard. This is like the hard part of events is having kind of a repeatable way to get people to show up. So, think back to college, like what did you do? You gave booze away because you didn't have an ID and you didn't have money. So think about kind of like, obviously we're older now, it depends on the demographic you're targeting, but for us, we did a couple different things. So we thought, for one, I graduated from business school and I knew from just anecdotally that all the MBAs wanted to meet each other in San Francisco. They had just gone through this intense 2-year experience. It was like a come down experience. You kind of wanted to meet other people who had just gotten through that. So no one was having these mixers. So I was like, why don't I just create a mixer for MBAs? And they all, it almost was viral just because the concept hadn't been done before and everybody wanted it. So that was an example of like, there was no MBA mixers in San Francisco, and I created one, and then people showed up. Same with we did a girls' shopping night. I worked with a local store to keep the store open after hours, gave everybody a really nice discount, and had just women show up and gave them credit if they brought in friends. And that was, again, a nice way. Maybe 40 people came, but I still remember those 40 people. They've all referred a ton of people now 3 years later. It's like, these are almost like your family members that you're building. We did an open bar, so I'm not above spending money on booze to get people to show up. That is always an effective strategy, even with the 20 and 30-year-olds. You'd be surprised. I think people like the excuse of saying there was free alcohol so they can show up. So for some reason, we found that people really like open bars. So we spent about $3,000 on like a 1-hour open bar. So not that much money. And you can see here, like a lot of people showed up. So I think, we made sure everybody had the app downloaded. We wristbanded everybody. And then we cut the tab off at a certain amount, and people stayed and kept drinking. So it was, a $3,000 spend, but it was worth it. We had about 300 signups at that point. So, when you're at like $10 a signup, that's actually pretty good in pre-launch land. And we also did tricks with incentivizing people to show up on time. So we said, if you show up at 7, before 7:30, you get a free SoulCycle pass or a free berries pass. And these are actually given to us free by me doing kind of business development, sitting down with the local general managers and they basically gave us free passes. So we used them as currency to really incentivize people to come and show up. We did learn that the women respond more to this, so then all the women came at 7:30, and the guys didn't really care about this, so we did have a little bit. We learned that we need a different incentive for men besides SoulCycle. But, so that's why we started working with berries, and also we're working with some other fitness people at this point. But you can see we had a berries class. So again, this is all before we launched. So people are kind of like, what is this? What is the league? What is this app? The app was in the app store with just a waiting list. So we weren't providing value to anyone yet. We just had a wait list and people could see what wait list number they were. So it was actually kind of funny because people were like, what? I've been going to all these events. Are you the girl with the wait list app? And so I was sort of the girl with the wait list app in San Francisco for about half a year. And I was like, no, I swear it's gonna launch. It's happening. It's kind of like Stewie's novel. It's happening. Family Guy. And so the trick to getting people to show up, one more, looks like, all right, 10 minutes left, so I'm gonna try to leave some room for questions. So I'll try to fly through the last bit, but another example, we got a boat for Fleet Week. It's really hard to get a yacht on Fleet Week. I had to book it almost like 9 months in advance. So I did that and kind of paid the risk. I think I had to pay down $7,000, but then we ended up making the money back in tickets. But this is another example of like, people didn't even care who was hosting this. They just wanted to be on a boat for Fleet Week when the Blue Angels are in the sky. So we almost like used the Blue Angels as a marketing lever and this boat that nobody could get access to. So you can see here, people had a lot of fun. And then once you're at the actual pregame, like don't force them to listen to a sales pitch. I always say, be glad they even came through the door. That's like a huge accomplishment. And just be happy and get to know them as people and tell them about what you're building, tell them about your journey and treat them like another entrepreneur. I think that's sort of how we thought about it. I always thought of these people as my beta, or we called them alpha testers, because that's how kind of early stage we were. And so then you need to think about when do you end the pregame and have the actual launch, right? It's really fun to just have these parties and not have any expectations on the app actually working. We didn't have to actually match anyone. It was pretty nice. It was a nice period. I missed that period. No users, no customers, no refunds, nothing. So enjoy this period, but also, you do need to actually launch. And so we finally decided November 2014, we had enough users signed up, men and women, and we decided to go ahead and open the doors to 300 guys and 300 girls in November 2014. And you can see we actually used the product. It's sort of hard to read, but this is our wait list. This is the first version of our wait list. But essentially, we told them what wait list number they are. We told them how many guys and girls we needed. We sort of exposed everything to the user so they could kind of go and get their friends on, and they could see there's only 5 spots left. So we sort of used the product to sell and market as well for us. So let's talk about the main event, and then I'll open the floor for questions. So, when you actually think about the product launch, you got to get your pre-gamers to the product launch, right? So, again, this is what we're going for, is you want your pre-gamers to show up, be on time, be high energy, talk to people. You want them to, feel committed to the app and stay. And you want them to, invite other friends, and hopefully, it adds value to their whole network. And so how do you actually get them there? So what we did is we did a ton of emails and personal emails. So I was always emailing from my personal account. I never did any SendGrid, anything like that. I was always constantly telling people, I'm like, hey, it's really important to me that you show up on launch day. You don't even have to show up any other day, but it means the world to me. And so we really almost begged our users to, half of these 419 people were my friends, right? So of course they showed up. But it kind of started with this sort of really personal kind of handwritten email approach and say, guys, on November 12th, and we kept hammering that date into everybody at all these events, November 12th, November 12th, November 12th, so that people remember that was sort of the day we counted for. And then we were, and then at that point, then you got to hope that your product is good enough to kind of pick up the slack, right? So we would say November 12th, and then we kind of crossed our fingers that we would our matching algorithms were good, and our chat was good, and our referral techniques worked, and everything else. The product still has to be a high quality product, but I think you can do all of this even with a poorly built product, and this will help make sure that you have a better launch than you would have had. So. And you can see we didn't even have to have a launch party. So we literally didn't. We just said November 12th and opened it. And so we actually, I think we made money overall in the pregame period because we ended up making a little bit of money on the boat to cover the $3,000 we lost on the open bar. So we ended up breaking even. So all of this was sort of a free kind of marketing 4 months, I guess, or break even, I would say. So we do this for every city launch. So it's literally the exact same method for when we launched Minneapolis last week. I mean, we only have 300 users in San Antonio right now. So, you bet that they all got an email from me being like, hey, it would mean the world to me if you told other people in San Antonio about this. So it's all about kind of finding that main cohort in each region. At least for us, we're regional. So we have to do this a lot. So it gets, it's not the most scalable strategy, but we find it incredibly effective as a way to build loyalty and build what we want, a really strong we call it founding class. So we've done this for every city. You can see in New York that we had a pregame at Jane Hotel, and then we had the main event downstairs. So just to recap, when the party's good, people are referring friends, people are staying, they're, talking to other people, they're excited about it, and just like a product launch, just like a party, you can treat a product launch with a pregame as well, just so you make sure that the first people there are the people you want there. So just wanted to quickly add that we are now that we're in 30 cities, we're actually starting to really use data to actually do this more effectively and actually start to track the kind of network and node connections between our users. So we have their Facebook, we have their LinkedIn, so we can actually start to almost recognize who the hiker on Instagram is via our data. So I think this will become, much more scalable. So there is hope that you're not going to be constantly doing door-to-door sales, but I think the approach stays the same, is where it's very personal, very human, and making people feel like they're really part of your beta testing kind of founding class. Awesome. All right, well, I think I have about 5 or 6 minutes, or maybe 2? Yeah, 5. Cool, so I can take a couple questions. Yeah?
I was really curious, you mentioned in there that you did this research to try and figure out who the right cohorts were. Do you have any tools or tips for figuring that out and applying it to other?
Yeah.
What's the influencer discovery process?
I know. Well, that's sort of what I was mentioning at the end, is that we're starting to scratch the surface on that, of actually looking like a more data-driven approach to this. But right now for us, I mean, it's been pretty manual. It's really understanding, like in Philadelphia, Comcast is like the Google there. So understanding that, okay, I need to find there's probably a whole Google or a whole Comcast cohort that we want to get on. That's going to be our Philadelphia founding user. So it's really, for us, it's local research in each market. But I don't have great tools for that. But we're open to using that too. This is not a scaling talk. This is a launching from scratch talk. So. Yeah, the question was, is there a way to kind of do this in a more scalable way of discovering sort of the influencers in your industry and kind of identifying your target list, right? Because that's sort of the hard time-consuming part. And we haven't found any sort of magic tools, but I'll let you know if we do. Yeah, back there in the coat.
You use the word we quite a bit for launching pre-games. What was your team size and how did you fund it?
Yeah, it was me and Meredith. And then we had Derek, who was doing the development on the app. But it was actually, I was the only full-time, I actually did all the pre-gaming stuff myself. So I had some friends that helped me, my friend's a teacher, so she would help me at nights. And I flew a friend out to help me with a couple of these events. But it was really a one-man show up until, I think I hired Meredith right after we closed our round of funding. So at that point, I hired a couple people to assist me, but no, I did it all myself. So, but I was also doing fundraising, but I wasn't doing the development. So that's I guess a good distinction to make, is that I was doing design, product marketing, but I wasn't doing any of the coding. So I had time to kind of host events and do all these. Yeah.
So when you go into each new city, is it just some of you corporate coming in there, or are you hiring someone local who knows the scene and knows who to be going to talk to?
We haven't done that. I like to think that's like an expensive luxury strategy, that if we had a little bit more funding, or if we raise another round, that would be something I'd love to test. But right now we go, well, for the first 16 cities, we actually flew to each city and had events on the ground and almost did customer development and research at these events. Yeah, in a couple, we now have like 5 or 6 people on the marketing team. So we have 4 or 5 would fly out to each event. Yeah. Yeah, Airbnb. Yeah, we're doing it cheap, but yeah, I mean, we find that being in person, at least for the first 15 cities, and now we're starting to do it more automated without having to go to each city. But for Philly, we came and we had a launch party. We asked people what they were looking for. We asked people about the app, and there's definitely regional differences that we will now start to reflect in our algorithms and things like that. So I still personally like going to each city launch. Oh, sorry. The question was, how do we launch each city, and do we still bring people into the ground, or do we hire local representatives? And we don't hire local representatives. We send our team to each city. Yeah.
How do you manage your brand
Right.
So how do you manage your brand as you grow?
Yeah, I think we spent a lot of, that's something I didn't cover in this talk. It's a great question. So is that about how to build and manage your brand as you grow? We actually, my friend from Carnegie Mellon is a creative director, and so I kind of had her involved from the very beginning. Even that girl's invite with the shoes, she hated that. She's like, that's off brand. We need to be building a consistent brand from day one, and we hadn't even launched yet. So I think having an eye to your brand and consistency and getting a good designer in that can make sure, from the very beginning you're using the right fonts and the right kind of style and the right language, I think was really helpful because I didn't think about it like that. I was like, we just need to go and do all these things. And she's like, no, you need to be, everything you do is building your brand. So I think thinking about that early on and getting someone in to kind of think about the brand before you even start the pre-gaming process.
One more.
When you had your app up in the App Store, just with people joining the wait list,
Yeah.
how did you manage their expectations? How did you keep their attention? How did you keep them from saying, I've been waiting for this for 4 months?
Yeah. No, so the question was, when we had just a waitlist app in the App Store, how did we kind of manage expectations so that people weren't annoyed and deleting it and, complaining? So it was a lot of messaging. We did a lot of, luckily our users do read more so than many users. So we have a lot of verbiage. I would say our app is pretty text heavy if you download it and go through the onboarding. And I like to think that intelligent people will read. I still have faith in humanity that they will read. And so we actually put a lot of product marketing messaging of saying, hey, we're not yet live, but we need 10 more people. Now we need 9 more people. Now we need 8 more people. And it's happening soon. And we actually put the date of the launch on the screen and say, we're launching November 12th. There's only 4 spots left for women. Do you know anyone? Get your friends in. So it was a lot of us kind of promising and saying it's coming, and sort of teasing about what they're going to get and always asking what features they want so that they felt like the longer they waited, sort of the more impact they had on the product roadmap. So we would always say, we always remind people how long they've been on, and you're a League supporter since April 2014. That's crazy. Because of that, we'd love to find out what you think about our onboarding process, and if you don't like anything, we'll fix it. Very much making people feel very privileged for being there that early. Really good question, though.
Cool. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.